Let me tell you a little story about an audience member. The worst kind of audience member. The one that every creator fears the most. If you're a creative, this story will be an absolute nightmare. A torturous tale from your worst, your scariest dreams. It's about a friend that I used to have back in high school. We'll call him D for the sake of this story. Now this guy, he had a really interesting taste in art, because most of what he liked was great stuff, and yet I could tell he had no fucking idea what was great about it, and would completely misinterpret the intentions, or just consume things in such a way that would make someone like me very frustrated. You know, I guess it's fair if you're enjoying yourself, then whatever, but like, for some of us, especially creative people, this is an absolute nightmare. This guy, his favorite video game series was Metal Gear Solid. He would skip the cutscenes. The first time he played through Metal Gear Solid 4, the first time he played through it, he skipped all the cutscenes. Now, Metal Gear Solid is a game that's mostly known for its story, for its cutscenes. I mean, the gameplay is important as well, but the story is like what people really come to it for. And the thing about it is that it's not like he was one of these guys who says, I don't care about the story. He would insist that he did know the story. He would insist that he could follow the story. He would insist that he knew everything about Metal Gear, and that he was a big fan of the game series. But if you ever, if you asked him like, oh, have you really watched the cutscenes in the other games, he'd say yes. But then if you were to ask him specific details, he'd always be off. But he'd never admit he was off. He'd just be like you'd correct him, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, that's how it was, And he seemed to have no self-awareness about this at all. It was an absolute nightmare. He was a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell, and just based on, I know the guy. I know there's no way he understands half of what's good about Ghost in the Shell. Like, he just likes it because of the aesthetic and because the Major is hot, and he just likes that sort of military action kind of story. But I'm almost certain he doesn't really get any of the deeper philosophical implications of the show. And again, you can enjoy whatever you like, but this is also the kind of guy who would complain about stories where his complaints are obviously based on misconceptions because he wasn't paying attention. But he would never, he would say something like, oh, that movie was really stupid, and you'd be like, why? And he'd be like, oh, it's just dumb. But you could tell, like he would insist that it was a bad movie, even though if you ever watch a movie with him, he never pays attention. He sits there on his fucking PSP through most movies. He talks through movies. He doesn't pay any attention to movies. But then he'll go and talk about them as though he's seen them and insist that he was paying attention. This guy would just insist that he followed what was going on. At one point I'd loaned him my Boogie Pop novels, and he read them, and he said he liked them, and I told him, like, well, with Boogie Pop and Others, the first book, you kind of have to read it more than once to really get the full picture. Because I asked him, like, did you understand all of it? Because you kind of have to read it again before you're going to totally understand what's happening. He was like, no, I understood it all. I got it. And I was just like, how do you even fucking know that if you haven't read it the second time? Because it's not until you read it again that you realize what you don't know. I loaned him Boogie Pop at Phantom, the TV series, and he said that he really enjoyed it, but he skipped one episode. And I was like, why? And he said, I just didn't want to watch that one. And the one he indicated when he pointed at the box was like one of the most important episodes in terms of understanding the fucking story of Boogie Pop Phantom. And I was just like, how can you be this way? Now, the reason I bring this up is that guy, D, will never speak to any of the people who created any of those things. He'll never talk to Hideo Kojima. He'll never speak to Kohei Kodono He'll never speak to Masamune Shiro. You know, he's never going to talk to the creators of those things and bewilder them with the fact that he paid so little attention. You know, he'll never be able to criticize the shows based on false information that is the result of his not paying attention to what he was watching. I, on the other hand, will frequently interact with everyone who watches my videos. And I can tell when some people did not pay any fucking attention. And then they complain on the basis of misunderstood information. Now, it's weird for me. I think it's a little weird. It comes off a little weird, even to me, when I talk about my videos as art. Because my videos feel so direct. Like, to people who get them, you know, you watch it, and I'm just kind of explaining a point, right? Like, how could there be a boogie and pop scale for that? Because I always make that comparison that, like, you know, on some level, you come to the audience, and on some level, the audience comes to you, right? And it's like, if the whole audience doesn't understand, it means that I didn't dumb down the point enough. And to a lot of my viewers, it seems like, how could it be more dumbed down, you know? But I do write it with a stylistic flourish. I like my videos to make a point in a fun and succinct way. I like writing in this sort of cheeky, kind of pseudo-collegiate intellectual way, but not in a way that's like using big words and fancy language so much as I like when I get to the point in a kind of a, like an aha moment, or like a gotcha, almost. So referring to my latest video, the hiding sex appeal of anime in plain sight, the first half of the video is me, like, deconstructing the idea that there's a fan service in, or presenting the idea, rather. I don't know why I said deconstructing. Presenting the idea that there's fan service in Flying Witch and Amanchu, you know? And I'm talking about how no one's really criticized it, and that's interesting. Now, if you're an inattentive viewer, and you haven't made it to the end of the episode, but you already think you know what the video is about, then you start making assumptions that I'm criticizing these shows for having fan service. But that never happens. The whole point of it is a build-up. It's luring you into this idea, but then the point of the video is at the end of the video. The point of the video is when I have this sort of aha reveal that, like, the reason this is interesting is because of what it says about how people think of fan service. You know, how this is not really more mature than nudity, and how that's a conversation that I think would be interesting to have. But if you're not paying attention to the fucking video, or you don't make it to the end, or you don't consider the whole point of it all at once, then you won't get it. And I could write the video differently. I could write it with clarifications up the fucking ass. I could make the whole video, by the way, I'm not saying fan service is bad, even though I say that in the video, you know, but I say it in a way where I say, you know, if you ask me to step up to bat for a show that's blatant about its fan service, I'll show up to the plate with a road sign like Shizuo. That sentence will go right over a lot of people's heads. What the fuck does that mean? Some people don't know what it means to step up to bat. Some people don't know, I guess just don't get it at all. You know, I could have dumbed it down. I could have said stopped every sentence and made my point very clear. But that's not how I want to write. I like videos that have this kind of cheeky aha nature to them. You know, my writing style is heavily influenced by Ghost Lightning, who wrote like that. Like, a lot of his posts were like that. You know, he loved that video, and I'm not surprised, because it's the kind of thing he would have written about in the same way he would have written about it. It's a very Ghost Lightning video. Granted, he would have probably had less defensiveness over fan service even than I would have, or less willingness to be defensive of shows like Seiko no Quasar. But yeah, like, and only because he has less reason to, he's not as interested as I am in those shows. But But, you know, that's the style I like writing in. But then, the problem is that I also like reading comments. And so I kind of have damned myself because I'm going to have to read the comments of the people who don't pay attention. You know, and the same thing happened with the Kill La Kill video. And I made a whole clarification video after that just because it was driving me fucking crazy. And I'm tempted to do it with the Flying Witch video. I'm tempted to make a clarification thing, but then I have to take a step back and be like, hold on. You know, the reason you didn't write this dumbed down is because it's not about the audience. It's about what I wanted the video to be. You know, it's not about the mass appeal. That's why I'm a boogie pop guy. You know, that's why I say that. Even though people might look at my videos and think, well, is this really like an artistic statement? Like, what's so... You're just like describing what's in a show. Yeah, but, you know, even then, there's a level of abstraction there of you know, writing with the expectation that the audience will pay full attention and watch the whole video before they come to any conclusions. And even some people who I can tell are fans of me and, you know, and wanted to understand the point didn't quite get it. And I had a lot of conversations like on Twitter and other places with people who just, they seem to have gotten out of it like what they, like where, like at some point in the video they thought, well, now I get the point, and then, you know, didn't listen to the whole thing. Like, my videos have to be consumed as a whole entity. There is no, like, there's nothing you can break off of it and it'll still make sense as a whole, you know? It's why the Asterisk War Sucks is so misunderstood by people who don't watch the whole thing. You know, people who watch, like, little bits and pieces of it and are like, hey, he's just trashing some show. It's like, yeah, but there's always a greater point to why I built up to this ending. You know, the video is a complete piece of work. It's not just a string of random ideas. And I get why people think that way, because so much of what's out there, so many videos are just formulaic, you know, strings of fucking comments on things that are all taken at face value, that don't have a greater point they're getting to in the end, you know. And if I just had written the video in such a way, like if I just reversed it, you know, if I reversed the point, made it very explicit in the beginning what my point is about to be, and then explained the point, then more people would have understood where I was coming from. But it doesn't have that same flavor to it, of the fun aha moment that comes at the end of this build-up. You know, it's more dramatic the way I write it, because I want it to feel cool, you know? I don't want to just fucking describe something. I don't want a drab analysis of something, you know? There's a reason I would never write in the style of, like, Matthew Matosis, and not to say that I don't like his style. It's fun to watch his videos, but they're very much a cut and dry, start from the beginning, work your way through, describe every single thing, you know, make the point very abundantly clear from the beginning. And I would never be able to write in that style, and I don't like it as much, you know? I really prefer, like, a Mr. B-Tongue video, where he deliberately strings you along and keeps, like, hinting at you that maybe you're gonna get to see the point, but you really gotta make it through all this other stuff, you know? And then when he finally brings it all back, it's tight and impactful, you know? And it's a lot harder to, like, rewatch a Matthew Matosis video than it is to rewatch a Mr. B-Tongue video, or one of my videos, I'd like to think, you know? I write them in a way that's meant to be reconsumable, that they're meant to stand alone as articles that are interesting, that you reread multiple times, and that are engaging on their own. It's not just what I'm talking about that's interesting, it's the way I'm talking about it that's interesting. That's why those are the videos that, you know, that I mark on Patreon, that I feel proud enough of to try to make money off of it, because to me, that's more of an artistic video, and that's why I love writing so much. But, you know, if a lot of people are gonna misunderstand it, and, like, at some point I have to decide, do I want to, you know, just make another fucking video re-clarifying the points just so that the discussion will be better, or do I want to just, like, ignore the discussion like a normal artist would? You know, because most artists are not dealing with this problem. Most people don't have to hear from D. They don't have to hear him talk about their work and be just bombarded with the knowledge that they didn't pay attention, you know, and then get so bothered by it that they feel the need to clarify again and explain their own art. Most people don't have to explain their own art, you know, and yet somehow I keep finding myself in that position. It doesn't help that my art is basically explaining art, you know, so so it's kind of cyclical. There's a reason I don't send my videos to the people who make the shows, you know, because even though I feel like I get it, I don't, you know, it's just all opinions. It's just it's its own thing. It's not even relative to the artist's intention. And I'm sure there's a few artists I've talked about their work who would absolutely hate me if they had to watch one of my videos, you know. But yeah, that's the sort of suffering that I feel in the comments sometimes. And so, without further ado, just to clarify, that video was not criticizing fan service, nor was it criticizing the fan service in those shows, except for the fact that clingy clothes bother me personally. It was a criticism of the way that people talk about fan service and how people don't seem to appreciate that these shows are blatantly featuring the most attractive characters and putting them in the most attractive outfits because that's appealing, you know? And how it's funny to me that that's not criticized as immature in the way that showing tits would be, even though it's basically the same thing. That's the point of the video, for anybody who didn't get it, who might be listening to this now. I doubt that's too many of you. Oh, God. Alright. This was actually a real decompression issue, so glad this show still exists. Maybe this whole Decompression Chamber podcast is going to stick around for longer than I first thought. Because, man, I've gotten to a point that I almost need it. Today I had a moment early this morning that was so powerful in making me want to talk about it on the Decompression Chamber that it's had me anxious all day. It's Christmas Day as I'm recording this. I had planned to spend Christmas with my parents, get drunk all night, and spend the night at their house. I ended up going a day early and doing that the day before. So I was there Christmas Eve night, woke up on Christmas, you know, hung out with them. Felt weird all morning for reasons I'll get into later. Read this comment that really set me off, and I really wanted to decompress about it. But I ended up being there till 10 at night. Finally drove home. And I'm going to talk about it. It's hard to know where to start with this, but I'm going to start by explaining something, a concept I came up with a couple of months ago. I don't remember if I've talked about this anywhere, but if I have, I'm sorry. It's called the good person fallacy. Fallacy, if you will. I know I say it wrong. Because, you know, there's all these argument fallacies that people talk about. This is one that I find comes up all the time, which is the fallacy that the opponent in your argument is trying to present themselves as a good person. Because that's not something I try to do. I don't believe myself to be a great person. I'm not a bad person, but I don't believe myself to be a great person. I don't believe very many people to be great people. You know, to me, being a good person is like, okay, you know, good and bad, like, most of us are 6 out of 10 people. Let's put it that way, you know? If you're a good person, you gotta be a 7 or 8. You gotta be putting a little effort in, you know? You gotta be greasing the fire of the good person, you know? And bad people are you know, doing something real wrong, basically. Fundamentally, something's broken. I don't think I'm a good person. I think I'm like a 6 or 7 out of 10, you know, really depending on who you ask, in terms of moral quality. Maybe even a 5. I actually might be a 5 out of 10, or maybe lower. It really depends on who you ask. You know, I think to be considered a good or great person, you have to be someone who's self-sacrificing and helpful and kind, and, you know, having the qualities of a good a good individual. I don't have a lot of that. You know, I have it, maybe I have it more than a lot of people. I have a lot of empathy. I understand other people pretty easily. I feel a lot for other people. I don't do a lot for other people. I feel a lot more than I do. You know, I feel really bad about all the hardships in the world. I don't do a lot to help them. I've often said I have a Rurouni Kenshin policy when it comes to helping people, which is I help the people I can see, the ones who are right in front of me, the ones who I understand their situation and what needs to be done to help it. You know, I don't give to charity. I don't try to help out on a global scale or anything like that. And there are people out there who do those things. Those are great people. You know, my dad is a much better person than me. He does a lot for charity. He does a lot for helping people. You know, he gives a lot of both time and energy and money and love and care. He gives all that. I don't give that. I'm not a great person like my dad. You know, and when I get into an argument with someone, I'm not trying to prove that I'm great. I'm not trying to prove that I'm morally righteous. I'm just trying to prove what I think, you know? I'm just trying to state how I feel on the matter and support my claims and make you understand how I feel. It's not about convincing you that I'm right or good. It's just about convincing you that I understand my own position, sort of. So this also, you know, if this sounds a lot like my usual moral, my objectivity versus subjectivity arguments, it's very similar. I feel the same way about morals, you know, and I've been described as a moral relativist by some people. I don't know how much I agree with that, though. It's not that I think... I mean, yeah, there's no objective standard of morals because that's fucking ridiculous, that mere idea. But you can have a pretty clear consensus on what's good and bad, right? My version is anything that brings you closer to life is good. Anything that brings you closer to death is bad. If what you're doing has a net gain for humanity, it's good. If what you're doing is a net gain for humanity that's negative, it's bad. And, you know, you can never predict what it's actually going to be. There's no way to actually, like, predict what effect what ripple effect your actions will have. But on a case-by-case basis, we can say, like, you shoot a guy, that's bad. You know, you do something that endangers people, that's bad. You do something that helps people, that's good. I think that's pretty clear. I think that's pretty fucking cut and dry and nobody's going to disagree with it, you know? So, yeah, I do have a standard of what I think is good or bad morally. I just don't hold myself to that standard. I don't go out of my way to paint myself as a good person, nor do I think of most people as good people. You know, like, it's not that I think of myself as worse than most. I think there's probably a lot of people who think they're good who I would disagree with them on that. Because the way I see it, every resource we use, you know, is a resource we're not giving to someone else. You know, someone who needs it doesn't have it, and we're using it, and we don't need it. That's a thing that is just, that's a part of Western society right there. If we gave up our conveniences and used those to help the impoverished, we'd have a lot fewer impoverished, and we don't do it. Because, and for good reason, we wouldn't be happy if we did it. You know, we're not raised in such a way, we don't have such a mindset to make us people who can do that. There are people who can do that out there. Those are great people, but, you know, they're not great because they made this unbelievable decision to be great. They're great because they have the state of mind to be great. They're people who, you know, were raised in a certain way and have a certain set of beliefs that leads them to do great things. But that's not me, and that's not most people. I wrote about this in my song Seethe. You know, I'd be hard-pressed to name 2 guys that I like unqualified or any that I find to be good. As I said in those lyrics. A lot of these thoughts, a lot of these kinds of thoughts are more present in my song lyrics than they are in any of my writing or podcasting and stuff like that, because I tend to get out more of my anger and vitriol towards humanity out in my music. But I have to talk about this. And this boils down to really my sub versus dub video I did. My video about my stance on dubs. On multiple levels. I almost responded to this when I talked in that last section where I was talking about comments, but I forgot to get to this. Because I got a certain accusation a number of times on that video of being very biased and unfair and ignorant about the dubbing industry. And when I got those comments, all I could think was, well, yeah, this is not a review of the dubbing industry. This is my stance on dubs that I somehow still haven't made a video about. I never said my stance on dubs was not ignorant. I never said it was fair and balanced. I never said I'd done research. Never said I had any investment in the dub industry. I don't give a fuck about dubs. I don't even like dubs or respect dubs, as I said at the beginning of the video. You know? There were some people who said they turned off right there, and I'm like, fair enough. You know, I don't like or respect dubs. Didn't say I was going to be fair about it. So that's part of the criticism. Now, I also wanted to talk about this because there's a part in the video where I say that I hate Vic Mignogna, both as an actor and as a person. And I got a bunch of questions, like asking why. Why do you hate Vic Mignogna? And I quickly realized I can't answer all of those. And this is one of the difficulties of doing videos, is that I feel like I constantly have to re-clarify and explain things. Every little thing I say, I have to then make another video about, or make 1,000 comments explaining it. And at this point I was like, I don't, like, a lot of the times it's something I don't care that much about. You know, I just said it as a one-off line in a video. I don't want to have to go and explain. I'm not that invested in my hatred of Vic Mignogna. I just think it's really funny because I think he's a douchebag and I hate his acting, you know, which really should be enough of a reason to hate the guy because he sucks at acting and I don't like him. I've hated people for less. So I was answering people on my Reddit board who asked, you know, I explained myself. I said, well, he's a weird Christian fundamentalist who has said at a panel before that he doesn't think that Edward Elric is actually an atheist, even though in Japanese, Edward Elric literally says, I'm an atheist. But they changed that line in the dub, possibly as a result of him not being comfortable with it. That to me is more than enough reason to hate the guy, you know? I don't know him. I don't care about him. Maybe he's a nice guy. I don't fucking care. Still hate him, you know? It's not about whether he's a good person or even whether he's a better person than me. It's just about what pisses me off. That pisses me off. He refused to sign a picture of his character from Free, like, making out with another guy. It was like some yaoi fan art, and he wouldn't sign it because, you know, it just made him uncomfortable, whatever. Fuck him. Fuck that guy. Fuck him for being uncomfortable about some gay shit, you know. Fuck him for being weird, a weird 50-year-old guy who dresses like a teenage heartthrob. And there's 1,000 rumors on the internet about misconduct he's had with, like, underage fans of his. I don't know how true any of it is. I've been hearing these rumors for years, forever. You know, every time someone brings up Vic Mignogna, someone else brings up, oh, he might have molested a bunch of fucking 14-year-olds or something. You know, you hear something enough times, you think it's probably true. Maybe it's not true at all. Maybe it's just a bunch of bullshit that's out there on the internet. I don't give a fuck, you know? Don't like the guy. I'm not out to lead a smear campaign against him. You know, I'm not out to ruin his career. I've just made a decision about how I feel about him. And I think it's funny, so I keep saying it. Now, I got a comment in response to this that pissed me off on a lot of different levels. And it tends to be that the comments that piss me off the most are the ones where there's some element of it that I agree with, but it's packaged in a way that I vehemently disagree with. You ever have those people who say, like, fuck you, I hate you, your content is awful, and then they rant about all these different reasons they don't like you, and all of it's a bunch of bullshit, but then there's that one nugget in there that you're like, if you had just said that and you'd said it politely, we could have had a conversation about this, you know, but they don't. So this guy gets mad at me because he says, you know, while I don't know Vic Mignogna, I have, you know, talked to him through emails and stuff. And he seems like an upstanding guy and a cool, chill guy or whatever. And I think all those rumors about him doing all that misconduct is a bunch of horseshit and like a smear campaign against him. And that part, he was obviously mad at me because I was talking shit about somebody without having a lot of information about him, you know, without knowing the guy. And he might be an okay guy, and maybe it's fucked up for me to sling mud at people I don't know. That's a fair enough argument, you know? I would have been willing to have a conversation about that. But it was packaged in between, oh, and you're such a good person. You think you're any morally superior to him? You fucking... And then he goes on about, like, these problems he has with me and how he thought I was intellectual enough to be above all this kind of stuff. But, you know. So obviously, that part of the argument just pissed me off. So I told him to fuck off. I said, fuck off, I'm not... He said I was attacking. I said, I'm not attacking Vic Mignogna, okay? I'm just being a dick over here on my subreddit, you know, explaining myself. I've made a statement that I don't like the guy. I've explained why I don't like the guy. This is not an attack. I'm not waging an internet war against fucking Vic Mignogna, you know? There's a reason I didn't make a video about this. I don't want to go around spreading rumors about insinuations. It's just what I've heard, and I have no reason to doubt it. I don't have any reason to believe this guy just because he talked to him in a couple emails that he suddenly knows what Vic fucking Mignogna's like, you know? And the candor of the comment sort of clued me in that this guy is probably also a Christian guy who probably likes Vic for those reasons, because he said that he thinks the reason that Vic gets these accusations is from people who don't like that he's Christian and have a problem with his beliefs. Then the things he accuses me of are weirdly things that a Christian would have a problem with. So I thought, okay, this guy's probably defending Vic because he's sick of seeing Christians get beat up on for being Christians, you know? And I get that. That's also fair. I don't like Christians. Don't like their belief system. Don't like the fundamentalist mindset, you know? I think it's a fucking like willful ignorance to know scientifically why something is untrue and to go on believing it anyways. It's like, well, you know, it's one thing if you just don't know any better, but it's a whole other thing if you've been shown the evidence and you still keep going on believing what you want to believe just because, especially if it affects other people, you know? When you have religious people who, you know, are like uncomfortable with or have a problem with gay people because it goes against their doctrine, even though their doctrine is not couched in any kind of scientific reality, then that's just being a fucking willfully ignorant shitbag, you know? Not saying that everyone who's Christian is that, but a whole lot of them are, and I don't see any reason for the religion to exist. I don't see how it helps anybody for it to be around. So, yeah, to me, can't say I have a whole lot of respect for it. Sorry if that offends you, but this brings me to the next interesting thing about this comment, and about being an internet content creator, or any content creator. Well, I guess this is mostly true on the internet, because most people wouldn't get to witness this. I have had these moments all throughout my career where I get to literally watch someone become disillusioned with me as a human being. I get to watch people go from thinking I'm good to no longer thinking I'm good. You know, hearing something I've said that they find questionable and then deciding that they like me less because of it. And I've gotten to watch this happen a number of times. And it is a deeply fascinating and in some ways frightening experience, because it's always sad. It's sad to know you've let someone down, you know, but at the same time, it's not my fault that they are getting let down, you know. I can't control what they believed I was gonna be or what they want a person to be, you know. Let's take, for example, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to most people who get into me that I drink a lot. You know, I've made that a part of my identity. I do a show called The Pub Crawl. I have alcohol in all my avatars and banners. I drink it on camera. I talk about it all the time. You know, I want it to be clear that, like, I'm a drinky guy. You know, it's a thing I do. So I don't think there's a lot of people who come in, but I did see this before when I first started drinking more, where people started being like, you know, it makes me uncomfortable that you drink so much, because some people aren't comfortable with alcohol. Some people aren't comfortable with this or that, and it's not even always on a moral level. Sometimes it's just on an experience level, and I totally get it. Like, when I was a teenager, I was very straight-laced. You know, I didn't do anything illegal, and when other people did those things, I felt more disconnected from them. When I heard people, like, talk about, like, all the weed they were smoking, you know, some content creator talking about, like, weed and shit, and, like, fetishizing it and talking so much about it, it just put a little bit of distance between me and them, because here I was as someone who was deliberately not doing those things, you know, and then hearing somebody else talk about it, it just feels alienating on some level. And I understand that, but it's interesting to watch it happen, because there's other people who will be less alienated. If I go on here and talk about smoking weed, there's some people who are going to be like, yes, this is exactly what I want to hear. I love you more than ever before. You know, please talk about this all the time. It really makes me happy. And there's going to be other people who are like, I'm so uncomfortable hearing you talk about smoking weed that you know, it makes me want to tune out, or I skip those parts in the video. You know, it's divisive subject matter. And everything I talk about is divisive. It's just on different levels and different levels of people caring about it, you know? It's one thing to be divisive about your opinions of anime, but it's a whole other thing to be divisive on, like, a political or social issue that people might feel more strongly about, you know? It invites a different level, especially when there's people who completely agree with you on one front and then totally not on another. You know, some people who are like, man, our taste in anime is exactly in sync, but the way you live your life completely disgusts me, you know? And it's funny when people equate the two. Like, this guy who left this comment, I don't know what the fuck he could have seen from me that gave him the idea that I'm, like, this above conflict intellectual. Like, just because I analyze anime and sound smart, I somehow am also, well, I must be like some kind of fucking, I don't know, frou-frou anti-violence, being mean to anyone guy. Not really the case, you know? I can be mean-spirited, I can be insulting, I can be a dick. I don't hold myself to that kind of high standard, because I don't think I'm different from most people, you know? I'm not exactly trying to present myself as an amazing guy. Again, not that I think I'm an outright supervillain or anything, but sometimes I do feel like a bad guy, you know? I relate to a lot of bad guys. I relate a lot, and I appreciate art from a lot of bad guys. And that's another thing. Like, part of the reason that I'm not willing to hide those elements is that I respond well to those things. I really love listening to Kanye West talk about how much of a shit person he can be, you know? Or a lot of rappers who rap about similar things. I like, you know, I like listening to people who are outsiders, who feel like they don't agree with society, who feel out of place, you know, because I've always felt that way. So that kind of shit resonates with me, you know, and that's the kind of stuff I want to put out there. I'm not out there to put on a squeaky clean image for people who want to fit in, you know, it's not me. So I get to witness these things. And I want to pull up this list of things that guy called me on my phone, because I found this to be a fascinating list of accusations that he called me in this comment. You can find this on my Reddit, by the way. Alright, he says, he says, I don't see why he needs to continue to be personally attacked by degenerates, which I never personally attacked Vic Mignogna. But I find it interesting, this implication that I might be a degenerate. As if you or anyone else who attacks him is in any way morally superior. Well, I certainly never claimed moral superiority to Vic Mignogna. As what qualifies one for virtue today are masturbating to porn and being a morally relativistic, carefree libertarian who smokes the occasional blunt and voices some hate for a religious person every now and then for good measure. So I thought it was really interesting. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if he's talking about me, because some of that stuff just seems like smokes the occasional blunt is such an odd, out-of-place sentence and sentiment in here, as is the masturbates to porn, really. Because first of all, I've never had a blunt before. I've smoked weed exactly twice in my life, once a year ago and once last night. I'm leading into that as well. And I don't understand why that's coming up in an argument about whether or not I'm a morally upright person, because there's literally nothing wrong with smoking weed. But again, this is a matter of perspective. For some people, if I talk about smoking weed, it's like, you know, like to them that's like totally affirming. It makes me a better person, whereas others would think I'm worse. Masturbating to porn, if you have a problem with that, I'm fucking sorry, but you're a complete moron. And then, what was the other one? Morally relativistic, which I already talked about. Carefree libertarian. I don't think I'm a libertarian. I mean, I have so many socialist ideas. I've said this before. I'm Aberdolf Linkler, politically. I completely see both sides of the issue. If I'm libertarian, it's only to save my own ass, you know? It's just that, like, I think libertarian belief systems and structures support my lifestyle better, you know? If I was living in such a way that I thought socialism benefited me, I'd probably be more of a socialist. But that's all neither here nor there. I don't consider myself a moral person. I don't think I have to like people who are morally better than me, you know? That is not my basis for judgment on people. It's more about whether the things they do piss me off or not, you know? I get a bad vibe from Vic Mignogna. Not a bad vibe as in he's a bad person, but a bad vibe as in he does things I don't like personally. So that's why I don't like him. And maybe that's completely unfair, and maybe I'm actually the asshole in that whole scenario. I don't care if I am the asshole. I am through with the notion that I am cool, as I say in the song Seethe. Once again. So I did get super duper high last night. I started off normal high, which I hadn't been before. It was alright. I just ate everything. I got the munchies super hard and ate everything in sight. Then I just felt really chill, and I was like, okay, this is probably the state of mind most people are in who like getting high, is just being chill and listening to electronic music, you know. Listen to Frank Javc's Volume 2, and then a bunch of pogo music, and it was trill as all fuck. Then I got way too high. And then my brain started being 1,000 thoughts every second, and non-stop analysis of everything happening around me, and things were too fucked up. And then I thought it would be hilarious to watch Shrek. I thought, for the memes, I'll watch Shrek while high. That was a fucking nightmare. I'm going to read you my Snapchat story. If you don't follow me on Snapchat and you want to see things like this, by all means, follow me on Snapchat. My handle is Digibrony after D, all one word, because one of my dumbass friends made the account. So let me go through my story on Snapchat, because I live blogged Shrek while I was watching it. Alright, first we have Feelin' 840 and It Happening, as you can hear Smash Mouth playing. Holy shit, Shrek is the ugliest animated film ever made since Food Fight. Every word in that sentence is spelled wrong. This film is a waking nightmare of awful. There is one good line in this movie. This film is a cultural forced meme. I am trapped in the most thorough analysis of my life. To be fair, there are some little but solid gems in here. This scene is a Trump commentary, referring to Shrek trying to build a wall around Donkey. This film is about convincing libertarians to be socialists, or converting libertarians to socialists. And the nightmare is over, which I should have typed ogre, but, you know, I wasn't in the best state of mind. So that's my my very high analysis of Shrek. While I was high, that was the worst movie I've ever seen. The animation is like just all very stiff and shitty looking. The character models are hideous, absolutely hideous. Everything's very generic, low poly. It all looks like a fucking PS2 game, like an early PS2 game. The movie just looks like dog shit. It has no aesthetic sensibility at all. Everything is as standard and stock as it could possibly be. Bunch of canned musical appearances, you know, no cinematography at all. The voice acting all sounds like it's recorded line by line. Like, it doesn't sound like the characters are reacting to one another. Every line sounds like it was recorded like multiple times and they like chose a take, you know, or even constructed a line from multiple takes. And the music's generic. The non-licensed music is generic. So it's the worst movie ever, according to me, when I am feeling 840, as I put it. So that might be a fun story for some of you, and for some of you it might just sound like an uncomfortable, self-destructive whatever. See, it's funny, because I'm followed by a lot of nerdy types. Nerdy types who often don't get into a lot of these things. You know, these illegal substances or substances at all. You know, people who don't drink. And it's funny for me because even though I grew up super straight-laced, everyone I knew was super not. My parents are fucking punk rock people, you know? My parents grew up going to shows constantly, you know, smoking and drinking. You know, my dad never smoked much, but he was always a big drinker when he was in his early 20s. My mom smoked tons of weed with bands and shit. And, you know, that's who my parents are. I mean, I didn't really know that stuff growing up, but my parents are fucking very loose people. They swear constantly. That's why I swear so much, because my parents swear absolutely constantly, as badly as I do. And the people I knew in high school were all fucking stoners. You know, I was roommates with 2 of them at the same time. You know, they never smoked around me. I never saw weed once until, like, you know, last fucking Christmas. The first time I even saw it. But yeah, I lived with 2 stoners. They literally collected High Times magazine, a magazine about weed. You know, I mean, I guess I'd seen weed in that context, but I'd read those magazines. You know, I'd sit on the toilet and read High Times or these weed books they had laying around. You know, I just grew up around a bunch of stoners, and most of them had done other harder drugs, you know, and drank a lot. I didn't do any of that stuff, but I was familiar with it. So to me, all that stuff's very normal. It's all very like, this is what everyone does, you know? I've grown up around media that represents those things. I watch lots of movies where people do all kinds of drugs, or listen to music that's about drugs. Most of the music I listen to is probably about drugs, you know? So to me, that stuff all seems very natural. And most of the people I know do it way more than I do, you know? To people who don't drink at all, I might seem like an alcoholic. To an alcoholic, I seem like a lightweight who barely drinks at all, you know? To people who've never smoked a cigarette, I probably look like I'm addicted to cigarettes, which was true this past month or so. But I'm quitting again. But, you know, for years I smoked 1 cigarette a day, which is people who are like serious smokers. You know, my dad for 30 years smoked a pack to a pack and a half a day. That's 20 in a pack, by the way. You know, it's a world of difference. My grandma was smoking 4 packs a day for most of her life. She's still alive, by the way. She's like almost 80. And she had to quit eventually because she like couldn't, like she physically can't even smoke anymore. It did so many bad things to her lungs. But yeah, so to me that stuff all seems like, you know, babies first. And again, there's a divide in the audience here. Some people listening to this are going to go like, yeah, I know you don't do anything. You know, I know you're a fucking pussy, baby. And some people are going to be like, yeah, but you seem like you're just a whirlwind of debauchery and nihilism. Which is, you know, I present myself that way sometimes because I think it's funny. But again, I'm not, I don't know. It really is a matter of perspective. I've probably said that sentence 40 times now. I guess to make a long story short, if there's one thing I'm not interested in doing, it's policing myself publicly. And I do it a lot more than it probably seems like I do, given the kind of stuff I talk about online, just because I have very much tried to rein myself in as a person who posts every fucking random thought I have, because a lot of that stuff is not relevant to many people and would actively make me seem like an idiot, and I try to avoid that. Because if you read my if you read my Twitter circa like 2008 or 9, or like read my old anime blog, like it was just so much unnecessary information, so much extraneous bullshit that didn't need to be there. And you know, it really made me come off as like this dumb kid who was constantly shouting every thought I had. And it's like obnoxious to read that kind of shit, even though a lot of the Twitters I follow do practically the same thing, you know. But so I do rein myself in because I have a lot of stupid thoughts that you know, that I think for a second I should tweet and then I don't. But I don't want to be the kind of person who is constantly concerned about the overall moral presentation of my character, you know? Again, I am a gonzo journalist because it's about the experience of, like, what is it to be me? What is it to be an otaku, you know, who works online? It's not about presenting that as a good thing. It's not about presenting otaku as something you want to be. You know, if anything, I'd rather portray it more like Welcome to the NHK, as kind of a living hell and waking nightmare. You know, that's not how I feel my life is, but it can be that, and I don't want to hide those elements, you know. And I guess I would feel better about it if there was a squeaky clean guy. You know, if there was a version of me who did all the same things but just was a better person, or maybe another guy, well, there's plenty of people who do the same thing as me but are like, you know, actively more like I see someone like Endless Jess as like me with no scruples about presenting myself, that like, you know, I'm willing to go all out and just be you know, the monster that people want me to be in some cases. I absolutely love Jesse for that, and I think he's amazing for being so willing to put himself out there, you know, and not be concerned about trying to meet anyone's taste. He does not give a fuck about your taste. If anything, he doesn't respect you for the fact that your taste is not his, you know, and I think that's powerful, and I gravitate towards that. And on some level, because I feel like I'm such a spokesperson for a lot of the ideas I'm talking about, because of the fact that I present a lot of new analytical ideas, and I try to, you know, be a guy who also is talking about creators, and also is trying to get people into the medium, and I'm trying to be like this tour guide, like, that character, you know, gets farther away from the gonzo element, where it's like, on some level, I'm just trying to fucking just introduce people to new concepts in anime. That part of me can be more clean, can be more polished, and doesn't have to be so gonzo. But I'm not going to abandon the gonzo part. And this creates a sort of conflict of interest, and I think this is part of why some of my videos go so misunderstood. Because when I make a video like, what is the appeal of anime or something, like, that is meant to be as broad as possible. It's really meant to be something everyone can appreciate and everyone can learn from. Whereas a video like Flying Witch and its fan service is not broad. It's not for everybody. It's not a video that is going to concern everyone. It's almost academic. It's very like, you know, it's like a post made for other people who write about anime. It's like criticizing the way that criticism happens. So it's a little too meta for it to be mainstream. And, you know, reconciling those two different elements of my work can be difficult. And I kind of wish there was somebody else who wasn't gonzo, who was presenting those, you know, those more cleaned up versions. But then again, that person would probably be boring as shit, you know, because in my opinion, everyone is actually biased. And, you know, are we actually going to care what someone who's so presentable has to say? I don't know. I just know that it's really weird for me when my lifestyle and moral choices have to come into conflict with my public persona and the idea of who I am and how certain people perceive me. But it's always gratifying, at least, to know that there are members of my audience who absolutely buy into everything I'm doing and saying. You know, not to say that they, like, fully support all of it and they're like, oh, yeah, by all means, be a degenerate monster. It's just that, like, they get it and they see me as a human, you know, not as a collection of ideals or as, like, a moral figurehead or someone who's trying to present facts and, you know, and unbiased stances. They just see me as like, yeah, he's just an interesting guy. You know, that's all I want to be, is an interesting guy. A guy who you look at and you go, man, that guy's lifestyle is fascinating. And I know that people can do that because there's so many creators who I don't agree with on so many things, but I love them. You know, Film Crit Hulk, one of my favorite writers of all time. You know, top 5, easily. Top 5 most influential and favorite people for me. I adore Film Crit Hulk. But, you know, he has a lot of political opinions that I'm just kind of like, come on, dude. You know, he can go like really hard on that like social justice kind of angle that I don't resonate with that strongly. Not to say that I completely disagree with everything from that camp, but sometimes he goes down that road and I don't feel like I can follow. But I don't care, because he's a flawed person. He's a guy. You know, I don't expect him to reflect my ideologies or, like, my moral stance. I just want to read his really interesting writing, you know? And there's so many people I feel that way about. And there can be breaking points, you know? There's enough that I don't respect about Movie Bob that I can't really watch him anymore without just getting pissed off, because it creeps into everything he does. A lot of it being production and presentation that I just have problems with. But also his just, like, fucking shoving his political beliefs down your throat constantly and generally talking like an asshole. I could get into a whole other thing about Movie Bob. I'm sure I've ranted about him on the PCP a few times. But yeah, like, I just hope that more people can watch me and think of me as just an interesting person who they like hearing talk, and not trying to view me through a moral lens, because it's unfair in a way that I can't refute that guy because I don't know him. You know, that guy who left that comment, who is, you know, slagging off all these things he knows about me, but I don't know about that guy, because I'm sure if I had him describe as much of his life to me as I've described to him, I'd find a lot of fucking shit that I don't agree with that he's done, you know? But what can you do? Other than tell him to fuck off and ban him from my subreddit, piece of shit. I suppose that's about it for this one. I don't really have another thing to decompress about. I've had a few ideas of things to talk about on this show, but they're kind of more topical, and I don't know. It's weird to just like jump into some topic that's on my mind on this show, at least if I haven't fully fleshed it out, and some of those are maybe things for other videos or other places. I don't know. I'm still kind of finding what the decompression chamber is exactly, so I guess it's probably going to live for longer than I previously thought. Like, aside from the fact that it's nice to actually have it when I do need to decompress, I also am not completely sure what stuff does or doesn't go in this, and that's always an exciting kind of feeling. Likewise, Digibros might not end as soon as I have been saying it would, just because there has been more interest a little bit, and like once I talked about it, you know, people spoke up about it, and I looked through and realized that the view counts are not actually any worse than they have typically been, and a lot of people pointed out the rather obvious reasons that I guess I just kind of forgotten about why the show is not very popular, but I'll get into that on the next Digibros probably. So yeah. That about wraps up this decompression chamber. Stick around on my After Dark channel for something that's kind of like a decompression chamber, because, you know, I kind of want to keep this to one a week. I don't want to have two come out less than a week apart, but I do want to do a big end of the year sort of summary of what things have been like for me kind of video, like, you know, a capping off vlog. So expect that to come and be similar to this. But yeah, that's it. Have a nice day.